Elena stood at the edge of the small town in Oregon where she had lived most of her life. The morning mist curling around the weathered wooden buildings like a shroud. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of pine and damp earth, familiar, yet somehow suffocating. She pulled her shawl tighter around her shoulders, a fragile barrier against the chill, and glanced back at the modest house that had been her refuge and her prison for so long. The peeling paint and broken shutters mirrored the fragments of her past she desperately wanted to forget. Her fingers trembled slightly as she folded the letter in her hand, the edges worn from constant handling. It was the response to her mail-order bride application, a decision she had agonized over for weeks before finally sending it off in a moment of quiet desperation. The choice to leave everything behind was not made lightly. Elena's past was a shadow she kept locked away. Memories too painful to face, secrets she refused to share with anyone. Yet here she was, standing on the brink of a new life, propelled by a mix of fear and fragile hope. The town's few early risers bustled quietly along the main street, their faces etched with the kind of hard-earned weariness that comes from years of weathering storms, both literal and figurative. Elena felt like a ghost among them, an invisible thread in the tapestry of their lives. She had always been the quiet one, reserved and watchful, carrying the weight of a history she dared not reveal. Her lips pressed into a thin line as she tucked the letter into the pocket of her worn coat. Her thoughts drifted to the man who had answered her application, a rugged cowboy named Cole McAllister, whose name had been whispered with a mixture of respect and curiosity around town. He was a man shaped by hardship, a figure both commanding and solitary, with a sprawling Texas ranch that promised freedom and a fresh start. The letter he sent was unlike any Elena had expected, straightforward, without flowery promises or romantic illusions, but filled with a quiet strength that resonated with her own guarded spirit. Elena's heart ached with uncertainty. Could she trust this stranger? Could she trust herself to embrace the unknown? The past had taught her to be cautious, to build walls that no one could breach. Yet beneath the layers of fear, a flicker of something new stirred, a fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, she could escape the shadows that clung to her. As the sun climbed slowly above the pine-lined horizon, casting golden light across the town, Elena took a deep breath and squared her shoulders. She had made her choice. Leaving Oregon meant leaving behind the familiar pain, the whispered judgments, and the loneliness that had defined her for so long. It meant stepping into the vast unknown, where freedom was a double-edged sword, sharp and unforgiving. The morning was filled with the quiet hum of preparation. Elena packed her few belongings with deliberate care. Simple dresses, a worn journal, a locket that held a faded photograph of a woman she barely remembered. Each item was a thread connecting her to the past she could not yet fully release. She folded the clothes with reverence, as if by treating them gently, she could soften the edges of the life she was about to leave behind. Her neighbor, Mrs. Harlan, an elderly widow with kind eyes and a heart full of unspoken stories, stopped by to say goodbye. The woman's hands trembled as she pressed a small bundle of homemade bread into Elena's palms. "For the road," she said softly, her gaze lingering on Elena's face. "You have courage, child, more than you know." Elena nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat, grateful for the quiet support. The town's dusty streets seemed unusually still as Elena made her way to the station, where a freight train awaited to carry her across states and miles. The whistle of the engine was a haunting call to adventure, a promise of change wrapped in the cold steel of the rails. She clutched her satchel tightly, the weight of it grounding her as the platform buzzed with the low murmur of passengers and the clatter of wheels on tracks. Her thoughts wandered back to Cole McAllister. The letter had painted a picture of a man shaped by loss and resilience, someone who valued truth over pretense. He had asked for a partner who could stand beside him, not a fragile dreamer. Elena's lips curved into a small, uncertain smile. Perhaps this was what she needed, a life stripped of illusions, where honesty and hard work could build something real. As the train lurched forward, Elena pressed her forehead against the cool window, watching the familiar landscape blur into a tapestry of greens and browns. The mountains faded into rolling plains, wide skies stretching endlessly above. The journey was more than miles. It was a passage from the shadows of her past into a future she dared to imagine. Inside the train car, the low murmur of other travelers was a distant hum, a reminder that she was part of a larger world, one waiting to be discovered beyond the borders of her small town. Elena's fingers traced the edge of the letter once more, the ink still fresh with Cole's words. A promise of partnership, of a life built not on fairy tales but on the strength of shared purpose. The rhythmic clatter of the rails beneath her was a steady heartbeat, a cadence that matched the tentative beat of hope stirring within her chest. Fear lingered at the edges, a shadow that refused to vanish entirely, but it was no longer a chain, only a reminder of the journey she had dared to begin. As the sun climbed higher, the train slowed at a small station in Wyoming, a brief pause before the final leg of her journey. Elena stepped onto the platform, the cool air filling her lungs with a taste of freedom and uncertainty. She adjusted her bonnet, smoothing the crease of her coat, and searched the faces in the crowd for the man who had beckoned her here with a simple, honest letter. When she saw him, tall, rugged, and weathered by the sun and wind, her breath caught. Cole McAllister's eyes held a quiet intensity, a mixture of curiosity and guarded hope. He stepped forward without hesitation, extending a hand that was both an invitation and a challenge. "Elena," he said simply, his voice steady and warm. "Welcome to my ranch." In that moment, the weight of the past seemed to lift, replaced by the tentative promise of something new. The road ahead would be hard, filled with unknown trials and challenges. But here, in the vast expanse of the Texas plains, Elena felt the first flicker of a life she could call her own. The train's wheels ground steadily against the rails, carrying Elena away from the familiar and into the vast expanse of the Texas plains. Through the window, fields stretched endlessly under a sky, so wide it seemed to swallow the horizon whole. The landscape was a tapestry of golden grasses swaying in the breeze and distant hills carved by time and wind. It was a world both immense and intimidating, freedom wrapped in raw, untamed beauty. Elena's heart pounded with a mixture of anticipation and unease. The journey was more than miles traveled. It was a crossing from the shadows of her past into a future she'd only dared to imagine in quiet moments. She clutched the edge of the worn letter from Cole McAllister, its words a tether to hope and uncertainty alike. He had promised a simple life, built on truth and hard work, without the gloss of romantic illusions. It was a promise she needed to believe in. When the train finally slowed and came to a halt, Elena stepped onto the dusty platform of a small Texas town. The air was warmer here, carrying the scent of dry earth and distant cedar. The sun beat down with relentless heat, casting sharp shadows that danced on the cracked wood of the station. She adjusted her bonnet, shielding her eyes as she scanned the crowd. There he was, Cole McAllister, tall and rugged, with sun-kissed skin and eyes that held both a steady resolve and a flicker of cautious hope. His stance was firm, yet there was an openness in the way he regarded her that eased some of the tightness in her chest. He stepped forward, offering a hand roughened by years of labor. "Elena," he said simply, his voice deep and steady. "Welcome to Texas." The journey from the town to the ranch was a blur of heat and dust. The wagon creaked beneath them as they traveled down a ribbon of dirt road flanked by endless fields. Elena watched the sprawling landscape unfold. Rolling plains dotted with scrub brush, the distant silhouette of cattle grazing lazily under the sun, and the ranch house rising sturdily against the sky. The ranch was a world apart from the quiet Oregon town she'd left behind. It was alive with the sounds of animals, the clatter of tools, and the low murmur of men who knew the land as intimately as their own hands. Elena's nerves prickled with a mix of excitement and trepidation. This was no gentle life. It was one forged by sweat and grit, where every day demanded strength and resilience. Cole introduced her to the ranch hands, a close-knit group of men who eyed her with a mix of curiosity and guarded acceptance. Their greetings were terse, but not unkind, cautious like the land itself, waiting to see if she belonged. Elena nodded and smiled where she could, her quiet demeanor a shield as she adjusted to the rhythms of this new world. The first days were a whirlwind of learning. Elena watched as Cole moved effortlessly through the tasks of ranch life, checking fences, tending to the horses, and managing the herd. She tried to keep pace, her hands raw from unfamiliar labor, her body aching in muscles she hadn't known she possessed. Yet beneath the physical exhaustion, a spark of determination grew. She was not a fragile woman to be sheltered. She was a partner, willing to shoulder the burdens alongside Cole. Mornings began before dawn, the sky a pale wash of pink and orange as the ranch came alive. Elena learned to saddle horses, mend fences, and even handle the stubborn calves that tested her patience. The work was hard and unforgiving, but with each passing day, she shed a layer of doubt and fear. The land, vast and untamed, echoed the transformation stirring within her. Cole was a man of few words, his trust earned through actions rather than promises. Yet in quiet moments, when the sun dipped low and the world softened into shades of amber and lavender, he shared glimpses of his life, stories of loss and hope, of battles fought beneath the wide sky, slowly chipped away at the walls Elena had built around herself. Despite the gradual warmth growing between them, Elena often felt the weight of isolation pressing in. The ranch was a world apart, and though she was learning its ways, the sense of being an outsider lingered. Nights were the hardest, long hours under a starlit sky, where silence magnified the distance between her and the life she once knew. But Elena was not content to remain on the fringes. She began to find her place among the ranch hands, sharing meals and stories, laughter slowly bridging the gap between them. The men came to see her not as a delicate stranger, but as a capable woman who earned her place through grit and grace. Cole's gaze, once guarded and cautious, softened with quiet approval. As days turned into weeks, Elena felt the stirrings of something she had long buried. Hope. It was fragile, like the first green shoots breaking through cracked earth, but it was real. The ranch was becoming more than a place of work. It was a home in the making, a canvas for a life rebuilt on her own terms. Yet, beneath the surface, shadows of her past lingered. The memories she kept locked away threatened to break free when an unexpected visitor arrived, an old acquaintance whose presence stirred fear and uncertainty. Elena's heart clenched as the past she fought to leave behind reached out across the miles, threatening to unravel the fragile peace she had found. With Cole's steady support, Elena faced the challenge head-on. She refused to let the shadows dictate her future, standing firm in the strength she had forged on the ranch. The confrontation was a turning point, a declaration that she was no longer a woman defined by fear and silence, but one who claimed her power through courage and truth. This moment of reckoning deepened the bond between Elena and Cole. He revealed his own vulnerabilities, the scars hidden beneath his rugged exterior, creating a space where trust could grow. Their partnership evolved beyond necessity into something richer, an unspoken promise to face the world together, hand in hand. In the quiet that followed, under the vast Texas sky, Elena felt the first true stirrings of belonging. The journey from Oregon had been more than a physical crossing. It was a transformation of heart and spirit. Here, amidst the dust and sweat and endless horizon, she was beginning to build a life defined not by past shadows, but by the strength of her own making. Elena rose before dawn, the soft light filtering through the cabin window, casting a pale glow on the worn wooden floor. The ranch was already stirring, the faint sounds of animals and distant voices weaving through the cool morning air. She moved quietly, mindful not to disturb the fragile peace she was beginning to cherish. Today was no ordinary day. It was a day when she would step further into the life she was building here, one forged not just by sweat and labor, but by trust and connection. Over the past weeks, Elena and Cole had settled into a rhythm that spoke of partnership more than mere arrangement. The early tension between them had softened, replaced by a steady current of respect and reliance. She found herself anticipating the moments they shared, a shared glance over a fence line, the quiet exchange of tools, the unspoken understanding born of working side by side beneath the vast Texas sky. Cole's approval was not given lightly. His praise was measured, a nod or a rare smile that spoke volumes to Elena's guarded heart. She had proven herself capable, mending fences with skilled hands, tending to the horses with growing confidence, and bearing the relentless demands of ranch life without complaint. Yet beyond the physical toil, it was the trust that mattered most. Slowly, she was earning a place not just on the land, but in Cole's world. The community that surrounded the ranch was small but tightly knit. Neighbors stopped by with warm greetings, their curiosity tempered by the knowledge that Elena was still new, still finding her footing. She welcomed their cautious acceptance, participating in impromptu gatherings and sharing stories by firelight. Each connection chipped away at the isolation that had once enveloped her, weaving her more deeply into the fabric of this rugged life. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in hues of amber and rose, Elena found herself sitting beside Cole on the porch. The air was thick with the scent of wild sage and earth. A peace settled between them that needed no words. She glanced at him, noting the lines etched by years of hardship, the quiet strength in his steady gaze. "We've come a long way," she murmured, her voice barely above the whisper of the wind. Cole's lips twitched into a faint smile. "We have. You've done good, Elena. More than I expected." Her cheeks flushed, a warmth that had little to do with the fading daylight. There was something in his acknowledgment that reached deep inside her, a validation she hadn't dared hope for. It was more than approval. It was acceptance. But as the days grew warmer and the ranch thrived under their combined efforts, a shadow lurked just beyond the horizon. One afternoon, a dust-kicked rider appeared on the road leading to the ranch, stirring a ripple of unease. Elena's heart tightened as she recognized the figure, a face from a past she had fought so hard to forget. The man's arrival was a jolt, a reminder that the life she sought to build here was not immune to the ghost she carried. His presence threatened to unravel the fragile peace she had found, stirring old fears and doubts that she thought were buried deep. Cole watched silently as Elena's composure wavered, his protective instincts flaring beneath the surface. Without a word, he stepped beside her, a silent pillar of strength in the face of the storm. Together, they confronted the visitor, the past laid bare in the harsh light of day. Elena refused to be defined by the shadows that had chased her across states and miles. With a steady voice and unwavering eyes, she stood firm, declaring that the life she was forging here was hers to claim. The confrontation was not easy. It dredged up pain and uncertainty, but it was necessary. It marked a turning point, a moment when fear gave way to courage. Cole's support was unwavering, his presence a steady anchor as Elena faced the remnants of her history. In that shared struggle, their bond deepened, evolving from practical partnership to something more profound. He revealed his own vulnerabilities, the losses and regrets etched beneath his rugged exterior, creating a space where trust could truly flourish. Their evenings grew longer with conversation and quiet confessions, each revealing pieces of themselves that had been hidden away. The walls they had built around their hearts began to crumble, replaced by a fragile yet growing intimacy. Elena found comfort in Cole's honesty, a mirror for her own emerging strength. The ranch, once a place of isolation and hard labor, became a sanctuary of healing and hope. Elena's past no longer loomed as a shadow, but as a part of her story, one she was learning to integrate rather than escape. The community that had once seemed distant now embraced her, recognizing the resilience she brought to the land and to the lives intertwined with it. As the sun set behind the distant hills, casting long shadows over the fields, Elena stood beside Cole, watching the cattle settle for the night. The silence between them was no longer empty, but filled with unspoken promises and shared dreams. In this vast, untamed land, amidst the dust and sweat and relentless toil, Elena had found more than a home. She had found a place where trust could grow, where love could take root, not in grand gestures or fanciful dreams, but in the steady, enduring work of two souls standing side by side against the world. The evening sky stretched wide above the ranch, a tapestry of stars glittering faintly against the deepening indigo. The air was cool and still, carrying the faint scent of sagebrush and wood smoke from the nearby hearth. Elena and Cole sat side by side on the worn porch steps, the silence between them comfortable, filled with the quiet rhythm of the land settling into night. For weeks, their partnership had evolved. No longer just two people working side by side, but something deeper, a connection forged through shared trials and honest vulnerability. Tonight, beneath the vast Texas sky, that connection found its voice. Elena's fingers traced the grain of the weathered wood as she gathered courage from the steady presence beside her. Her heart fluttered with a quiet hope, fragile yet insistent. "Cole," she began softly, "I didn't come here seeking love. I thought I only wanted a place to start over, to find peace." Cole turned to her, his gaze steady and warm in the fading light. "I know," he said quietly. "I didn't expect this either. But sometimes the things we don't plan for turn out to be the most real." Her breath caught as the weight of his words settled between them. The barriers they had both maintained began to crumble, replaced by an honesty neither had dared voice before. Elena reached out, her hand finding his, fingers intertwining with a familiarity that felt both new and inevitable. Under the endless sky, they shared their truths, the fears, the hopes, the silent wishes tucked away in the quiet corners of their hearts. The moment was simple, yet profound, a turning point where practical arrangement blossomed into genuine affection. As the days passed, the community around the ranch began to embrace Elena as one of their own. Neighbors who once regarded her with cautious curiosity now greeted her with warm smiles and open arms. At the weekly gathering in town, she found herself laughing alongside ranch wives and neighbors, sharing stories and plans as if she had always belonged. Cole's friends, once skeptical, now spoke of her with respect, acknowledging the strength and grace she brought to the ranch. The transformation was subtle but undeniable, a testament to Elena's resilience and the quiet power of belonging. One afternoon, as the sun cast long shadows across the fields, Elena and Cole sat beneath the shade of an old oak tree, discussing the future with a newfound hope. Plans unfolded between them, expanding the ranch, improving the land, building a life that intertwined their dreams and labors. "We've come a long way," Cole said, his voice low but steady. "I want this to be more than just survival. I want us to thrive." Elena nodded, her eyes shining with determination. Together, the past, once a shadow that threatened to darken every moment, had receded into the background. Elena no longer feared the unknown. She embraced it, knowing that with Cole by her side, the future held promise. In the quiet moments before dusk, as the ranch settled into the peace of evening, Elena felt a profound sense of belonging. The love that had grown between them was not born of grand declarations or fleeting passion, but of shared hardship, trust, and unwavering support. She realized then that true partnership was a steady flame, nurtured by honesty and grounded in respect. It was a love that would carry them through the seasons of life, a foundation strong enough to weather any storm. Under the vast Texas sky, Elena and Cole looked ahead, ready to build a life together, one shaped by courage, hope, and the enduring power of love born from truth. Spring unfurled across the Texas plains in a riot of color and renewal, the once barren fields now bursting with wildflowers and fresh green shoots. The air was alive with the hum of bees and the sweet scent of blossoms carried on the warm breeze. Elena stood at the edge of the pasture, her hand resting gently on the rounded curve of her belly, a tender smile playing across her lips. Life was growing inside her, a new beginning, a promise of hope and continuity. The ranch, once a place of hard labor and cautious beginnings, had blossomed alongside her. Together, Elena and Cole had expanded the homestead, adding a sturdy barn and planting an orchard that promised future harvests. The land was no longer just a means of survival. It had become a legacy, a testament to their shared dreams and unwavering commitment. Elena's days were filled with the rhythms of ranch life and the quiet anticipation of motherhood. She moved with a careful grace, mindful of the life she carried, and embraced the support and care that Cole offered without hesitation. His steady presence was a balm, a reminder that she was no longer alone in facing the future. Neighbors stopped by with congratulations and gifts, hand-woven blankets, jars of preserves, and words of encouragement. The community that had once regarded her with cautious curiosity now embraced her fully, recognizing the strength she embodied and the joy she brought to the ranch. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in shades of gold and rose, Cole joined Elena on the porch. He took her hand in his eyes reflecting the warmth of the setting sun and the depth of his devotion. "We built something good here," he said softly. "A life worth fighting for." Elena nodded, her heart swelling with gratitude and love. "And it's only just beginning." Their daughter's arrival was a quiet miracle, a new chapter etched in the soft cries and gentle breaths that filled the small nursery. Sarah Grace was a beautiful blend of her parents, strong and resilient, yet tender and full of promise. Her presence transformed the ranch into a home, filling every corner with laughter, hope, and the promise of tomorrow. In the months that followed, Elena marveled at the journey that had brought her from the shadows of her past to this place of light and belonging. The fears and doubts that once threatened to consume her had given way to a steadfast confidence rooted in love and acceptance. She often found herself watching Cole as he worked the land or cradled their daughter, the lines of hardship softened by the joy that now filled his life. Together, they had forged a partnership that transcended the hardships of the past, a bond built on honesty, trust, and a shared vision for the future. The ranch, once a rugged expanse of untamed land, had become a sanctuary, a place where dreams took root and flourished. Elena knew that their story was not just about survival, but about thriving, about the power of second chances and the enduring strength of love. As the sun set over the Texas horizon, casting long shadows and bathing the world in a warm glow, Elena held Sarah Grace close and looked out over the fields they had nurtured together. The journey had been long and fraught with uncertainty, but it had led her to a life richer and more beautiful than she had ever dared to imagine. In that moment, she understood that true happiness was found not in escaping the past, but in embracing the possibilities of the future, rooted in courage, trust, and the love that had transformed her world.